I had always been told that Earth was special. Our history, our culture, the very way we had evolved it set us apart from the rest of the universe. I'd heard about the Galvok fleet long before I saw it. The first sightings had been dismissed as distant objects or anomalies, faint flickers in our telescopes, too far out to be of concern. But as the years passed, these sightings grew more frequent, more distinct. Slowly but surely the stars aligned, and the shadow of the Galactic Empire crept closer to our doorstep. I remember the day their ships appeared on our radar, the first clear signal that the rumors were not just stories. The data we received was unmistakable. Gigantic starships, larger than anything we had ever imagined, hovered on the edge of our solar system. The ships weren't like anything we had seen before, sleek and silent, their metallic surfaces reflecting the cold light of distant stars. The Empire's ships were a sight to behold. A strange mixture of terrifying beauty and perfect order, they hung in space like ancient gods, indifferent to the fragile existence of the world below. Their approach wasn't sudden, it was methodical. They didn't rush. They knew they had time. There had been so much speculation about what would happen if they ever came. Would they be conquerors? Would they bring peace? Or would they be nothing more than another oppressive force among the countless others in our history? We didn't know what to expect. But we did know one thing: Earth wasn't like other planets they had colonized. We were different. We had fought against every invader, every disaster, and every obstacle life could throw at us. We were survivors. I remember standing in the streets, watching as news outlets broadcasted the Empire's arrival. They claimed it was a peaceful mission, a diplomatic gesture, they said, an offer of partnership to Earth. Their representatives promised that Earth would thrive under their guidance, that their advanced technology would raise us to new heights. They spoke in perfect, polished tones, appealing to our better nature. They offered resources, knowledge, and protection. They said that joining their empire would mean eternal prosperity. But as I listened to their words, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Earth wasn't a planet in need of saving. We had our flaws, of course, our conflicts and struggles, but we had never been a world that needed to be fixed by outsiders. The Empire's promises were seductive, but I could see through them. Their vision was one of control, not partnership. The Empire's track record was clear: worlds like ours were either absorbed or destroyed, their cultures eradicated, their identities erased. The thought of Earth, this cradle of humanity, bending its knee to such an entity was unbearable. I wasn't alone in my doubt. As the Empire's ships took their place in our skies, something stirred in the hearts of humans across the globe. The warnings came, slow at first, then with growing urgency. People started to organize, rallying against the idea of submission, knowing that the price of peace was more than we were willing to pay. Our history had shown us the cost of surrender. The banners of rebellion went up. Some cities held peaceful protests, others prepared for worse. In the midst of it all, I wondered, could we survive this? The Empire was vast, and they had faced no resistance like this in their history. I had no idea what would happen next, but I felt a deep resolve, a stirring of something ancient and untamed in the bones of humanity. We weren't going to go quietly. Earth wasn't about to surrender to anyone, not even the might of an empire that spanned the stars. The tension in the air was palpable. Something had shifted. The Empire had underestimated us. They thought Earth was just another world, ripe for the taking. They were wrong. The first contact came in a blur of flashing lights and a deep sense of unease. Earth had prepared for this moment, but nothing could fully prepare us for the reality of it. The Galactic Empire's emissaries arrived with the quiet efficiency that only beings of their caliber seemed capable of. The ships, sleek and otherworldly, descended through the atmosphere like they had done it 1,000 times before. They didn't rush, they didn't need to. They arrived in perfect formation, their dark metallic surfaces gleaming ominously in the sky, as the crowd below watched in stunned silence. I stood among the thousands of people gathered in the city center, feeling a knot tighten in my stomach. The world's leaders had called for a public address and official greeting to the alien visitors who had arrived in our skies. What struck me most was the calm. There was no sense of panic, no sense of wonder. Everyone seemed to hold their breath, unsure of what the next moments would bring. When the Empire's representatives finally emerged from their ships, they were not what we expected. The towering beings were humanoid in form, but their silver skin gleamed unnaturally, as if they were made from some living metal. Their eyes, glowing an eerie blue, scanned the crowd with an unsettling detachment. They didn't seem to care about the faces before them. We were nothing more than a curiosity, an obstacle to overcome, or a resource to be exploited. They moved with such precision that it was almost as if they were mechanical, their every step calculated and deliberate. The leader of their delegation, a tall being with eyes that seemed to burn with a cold, distant intelligence, stepped forward. He addressed us, his voice smooth but firm, reverberating through the air with an authority that made the ground beneath my feet feel distant. "People of Earth," he began, his words cutting through the silence, "we come not as conquerors, but as partners. The Galactic Empire offers you the chance to join a coalition of worlds. A coalition that spans the stars, bringing prosperity and peace to all who submit." His words seemed almost too rehearsed, too perfect. He spoke as if our world had no will of its own, as though humanity had been waiting for someone to extend their hand in friendship, and yet, despite the soothing tones and the promises of grandeur, something about the offer felt wrong. A quiet murmur rippled through the crowd. We weren't fools. We understood what was at stake. "We offer you technology," the ambassador continued. "We offer you safety. Join us, and you will never want for anything again. Your world will flourish under our protection." His words were crafted to seduce, to lull us into a false sense of security. But I wasn't fooled. Protection for whom? Safety for what purpose? It was clear to me that this was not a simple alliance. They weren't asking for cooperation. They were offering a one-way relationship, one in which Earth would be a cog in a massive, impersonal machine. Before I could fully process what was being said, a voice rang out from the crowd, sharp and unyielding. "We don't need your protection." The words hit the air like a slap. The speaker, a man I didn't recognize, stood firm in the sea of humanity. He wasn't shouting, but his voice carried. He wasn't alone. Others joined him, a chorus of defiance rising from every corner. The Empire's representative froze for a brief moment, the gleaming blue eyes narrowing in slight disbelief. A moment of tension passed. The ambassador's expression didn't change. He simply nodded, as if acknowledging the resistance without surprise. "So be it," he said coldly. "We do not offer choices. We offer destiny. The Galactic Empire does not take no for an answer." It was then that I understood the true nature of their presence. This wasn't a diplomatic mission. This wasn't an offer of partnership. It was a statement. And we had just become their next target. The Empire was not here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. Earth was just another prize to add to their collection. They didn't need our agreement. They believed they could force us into submission, just as they had done with countless worlds before ours. But they had no idea what they were up against. The people of Earth weren't just going to lie down and accept their fate. The ambassador's cold words echoed in my mind as the crowd's anger simmered, as our future suddenly seemed very uncertain. The fight for our world was just beginning. The days that followed the Empire's cold rejection of our resistance were filled with confusion and fear, but also with an undeniable sense of unity. What had begun as a few scattered voices, raised in defiance during the ambassador's speech, soon became a roar of determination that swept across the globe. Governments, cities, and citizens alike started to wake up to the harsh reality of the Empire's intentions. Earth had become a target, and the stakes had never been higher. The Empire was quick to establish its foothold. They set up operations in major cities, and their fleets began to patrol our skies, the massive dreadnoughts casting their dark shadows over our cities like harbingers of doom. At first, their presence was subtle. They made no aggressive moves, instead maintaining a facade of peace, assuring us that their presence was for our own good. They deployed emissaries and experts, promised infrastructure and technological advancements that would elevate our society. But as their influence grew, it became clear that these were not acts of goodwill. It was all part of a larger plan to absorb Earth into their fold. It didn't take long for the cracks to appear. The first whispers of rebellion started in underground forums, in dark corners of the internet, in private meetings. People started to see through the Empire's false promises. The pieces began to fall into place. The Empire wanted control, not partnership. Their promises of prosperity were simply a means to an end where Earth's resources, its people, and its very existence would be bent to their will. At first, the resistance was unorganized, fragmented. There were scattered attacks on their supply lines, raids on communication hubs, but nothing that threatened the Empire's operations. We were not a military power. We didn't have advanced weapons or the technology to rival theirs. But what we did have was something the Empire could not understand: heart. Earth had always been a planet of resilience. We had faced wars, plagues, and countless obstacles, and we had survived. The spirit of humanity had always been our greatest strength, and now it would be tested as never before. The turning point came when a group of young hackers, who had been quietly working on the sidelines, managed to infiltrate the Empire's communication network. It was a risky operation, one that could easily have led to their capture or death, but it was our best chance. They gained access to the Empire's systems, bypassing their encrypted channels, and broadcasted a message to the entire world, a simple, defiant statement that would change everything. We will not submit. Earth is ours, and we will protect it with our lives. The Galactic Empire is not welcome here. Entry forbidden. The message was broadcast on every screen, on every device, everywhere. It was a declaration, a battle cry for humanity. And it was enough to ignite the spark of resistance across the globe. The message spread like wildfire through governments, military forces, and everyday citizens. It resonated with the spirit of rebellion that had always been a part of us. People began to rise up, not just against the Empire's forces, but against the very idea of subjugation. Governments formed alliances with resistance cells, soldiers defected, and civilians organized. What had started as an act of defiance from a few had become a global movement. I remember the first major strike against the Empire's forces. It was a coordinated attack on one of their key outposts, a high-tech installation in the middle of the African savannah. The rebels, led by a small group of military defectors and guerrilla fighters, launched a surprise assault, overwhelming the guards and taking control of the facility. It was a victory, not just a military one, but a symbolic one. The Empire had been struck. They were no longer invincible. The next few weeks were a blur of skirmishes and covert operations. Earth's forces began to grow stronger, more coordinated. We had no fleet like the Empire, but we had the terrain, we had the people, and we had the will to fight. Every victory, no matter how small, sent a message Earth would not bend. The Empire retaliated, of course, sending reinforcements, tightening their grip on our cities. But they were beginning to feel the pressure. Earth was no longer a passive victim. We were a threat. And the war for our future was just beginning. The cost of resistance was high, and we knew it. But there was no turning back now. We were fighting not just for survival, but for our very identity. Earth was ours, and we would defend it with every ounce of strength we had. The Empire had underestimated us, and now they would learn what it meant to challenge humanity. The battle for Earth grew fiercer with each passing day. The Empire had underestimated us, and now they were realizing the full extent of their mistake. What began as a handful of rebel skirmishes in the shadows had transformed into a full-fledged war. Earth had become a battleground, a planet fighting for its life and its future. Our forces, though small compared to the Empire's vast fleet, were relentless. What we lacked in advanced weaponry and technology, we more than made up for in creativity, determination, and an unyielding will to protect our home. We fought on our terms, using every advantage that Earth's diverse environments gave us. The dense forests of the Amazon became a fortress for our fighters. The deserts of Africa were transformed into hideouts for our guerrilla units. Even the icy plains of Siberia were used as staging grounds for daring raids against Empire convoys. But as our attacks grew bolder, so too did the Empire's reprisals. Their fleets darkened the skies, unleashing devastating bombardments on our cities. I saw firsthand the destruction they were capable of. Their ships, with their massive energy weapons, could turn entire neighborhoods into rubble in an instant. And yet, despite the overwhelming firepower, the people of Earth stood firm. We fought not because we believed we would win, but because we knew we had no other choice. This was our planet, our future, and we would not give it up without a fight. In the midst of this growing conflict, a group of daring rebels managed to do what seemed impossible. They infiltrated the heart of the Empire's operations on Earth. The mission was simple in its objective, but nearly impossible in its execution. They had to cripple the Empire's ability to track and communicate with their forces. The rebels, most of them young, some still teenagers, had trained in secret for months. They weren't soldiers in the traditional sense, but they were brilliant minds who understood the systems the Empire relied on. They knew that if they could sabotage the Empire's command center, we would gain a critical advantage. I remember the night the operation began. It was the dead of night, and the Empire's flagship had just completed another sweep over our major cities, ensuring the submission of any remaining holdouts. The rebels, dressed in camouflage, slipped into the heart of the Empire's command complex, an imposing fortress in the middle of New York City. For hours, there was nothing but silence. Then, as dawn broke over the horizon, the unthinkable happened. The rebels had successfully planted a virus in the Empire's systems, scrambling their communications, severing their links to the central command. In a single moment, the Empire's forces were blind. They no longer knew where their enemies were or what they were planning. And for the first time in months, Earth had a fighting chance. The victory was not without sacrifice. Several of the rebels were captured or killed in the operation. The Empire, enraged by the breach, immediately launched a retaliatory strike, but the damage had been done. Their once immense advantage had been significantly reduced. With their communications in disarray, Earth's resistance forces were able to launch a series of coordinated counterattacks, striking their weakened bases across the globe. The Empire, however, was not a foe to be underestimated. Their response was swift and brutal. They bombarded our cities with even more force than before, intent on breaking our will to resist. The fighting escalated, and we braced for the worst. We had been driven into a corner, and the Empire's resources were nearly limitless. But the thing that made them dangerous was also their weakness, their hubris. They believed that no one could stand against them for long, that their power was absolute, and this, I realized, was our greatest advantage. The more we resisted, the more they underestimated us. The more they retaliated, the more they strengthened our resolve. Earth was united in a way it had never been before. Governments, civilians, rebels, and soldiers alike all stood as one against a common enemy. It wasn't just a fight for survival anymore, it was a fight for our identity, for the very soul of humanity. As the weeks passed, we gained momentum. The tide began to turn. The Empire, once so confident in their dominance, was starting to fracture under the pressure of our resistance. The people of Earth had come together to prove that no empire, no matter how vast or powerful, could ever defeat a world that refused to surrender. The war was far from over, but we knew one thing for certain: Earth would not fall. And with each victory, we proved that the Galactic Empire had made its first and most fatal mistake. They had underestimated us. As the war stretched on, a palpable change began to sweep across Earth. The early days of resistance had been marked by uncertainty and desperation, but now there was something more, something deeper. Humanity had found its strength not just in its military tactics or technological advancements, but in its unwavering belief in its own right to exist, to live on its own terms. Earth wasn't just fighting for survival anymore, it was fighting to preserve its identity, its culture, its very humanity. And in that fight, the people of Earth had become an unstoppable force. The Empire had made a critical miscalculation when it underestimated the resolve of humanity. In their arrogance, they had expected our resistance to crumble under the weight of their superior technology and vast resources. They believed that Earth, a relatively young and primitive planet in their eyes, would eventually bend to their will. But instead, Earth had become a thorn in their side, a constant reminder that not every world could be absorbed or crushed. Every time they unleashed their might, it only fueled our determination. Every attack they made only brought more people into the fold of the resistance. We had become one unified force, with a singular purpose: to protect our home. The battlefronts continued to rage, but now the resistance had more than just guerrilla tactics at its disposal. Earth had rallied its best scientists, engineers, and military strategists to develop new weapons and countermeasures. The virus that had crippled the Empire's communications was only the beginning. We had started to reverse engineer their technology, learning from the very things they had used to subjugate us. Soon, we had developed energy shields that could withstand their energy blasts, armor-piercing missiles designed specifically to take down their ships, and cloaking devices to hide our forces from their advanced sensors. The Empire's once impenetrable dominance was beginning to falter. However, for all our advances, we knew the true battle was yet to come. The Empire had already begun to regroup, pulling reinforcements from other sectors of their vast dominion. They had retreated from some of our cities, but we could feel the storm brewing. Their emperor, the shadowy figure who controlled the Galactic Empire with ruthless precision, had never been one to admit defeat. It was clear that they would not leave Earth peacefully, nor would they allow us to remain independent. The final confrontation was inevitable. I remember the day it came. The skies over Earth darkened, not with the usual storm clouds of a coming weather front, but with the dark silhouette of the Empire's greatest fleet. Hundreds of massive ships, their sheer scale enough to blot out the sun, appeared in our orbit. They were here for one reason: to end the resistance once and for all. This was not just a military campaign, this was their final attempt to break our will, to crush our spirit, and to prove once and for all that Earth was just another planet to be conquered. But we had other plans. The resistance had been preparing for this day for months, stockpiling weapons, coordinating with governments, and developing strategies to take down the Empire's forces once and for all. This was it, the moment where everything would be decided. Earth would either stand free, or it would fall forever under the Empire's yoke. I stood with the rest of the resistance as the first wave of Empire ships descended, their massive shadows sweeping across the landscape. The air was thick with anticipation and fear, but also with something else: hope. We had fought for this moment. And no matter the outcome, we would go down fighting. Earth had faced extinction before, and it had always come out the other side stronger. This time would be no different. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire unleashed everything they had: massive fleets, devastating firepower, and ruthless tactics. But Earth fought with everything in its arsenal. We used every weapon, every bit of ingenuity, and every last ounce of courage to hold our ground. We fought with the knowledge that our survival meant more than just our existence. It meant the preservation of everything that made us who we were. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Empire had underestimated something far more powerful than their technology. They had underestimated the will of an entire world, united in its refusal to submit. The tide of battle shifted. One by one, the Empire's ships fell, their forces crumbling in the face of Earth's relentless resistance. And when the last ship was destroyed, when the final shot had been fired, the sky over Earth cleared. The Galactic Empire had been defeated. In the days that followed, the people of Earth stood together, battered but unbowed. We had won. Against all odds, we had proven that no matter how vast an empire, no matter how powerful the foe, Earth would never be subjugated. The Galactic Empire had learned the hard way that humanity's strength wasn't just in its ability to fight, it was in its refusal to ever give up. We had fought for our planet, for our future, and for our right to determine our own destiny, and we had won. The message was clear: Earth was no longer a victim. Earth was free, and the Galactic Empire's entry was, and would always be, forbidden.